wrapping up in time, but I encourage everyone to go back home and look at sustainableagriculture.net in order to more easily navigate the programs than the USDA website. And with that, Billy.
Thank you so much for that. I did have a really beautiful presentation. So it's such a shame. But it's really no worries. We'll work together and we'll use our imagination to visualize these many charts and graphs that I hoped would do some of the speaking for me. But I'm sure that they'll also distribute the slides that we had prepared post-event. So if you really are curious and want to see what those visuals were, you'll be able to access them, I'm sure. But good morning, folks. My name is Billy Hackett. As was said, I work with the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition. NSAC is our acronym. And I'm here to chat about advancing equity in the Farm Bill from our perspective, alongside many of the partners and allies and members that we've had and heard from here today. So a little bit of grounding about who NSAC is. We're a grassroots alliance of over 130 member organizations from around the country working together to improve federal food and farm policy, and we have been for over 30 years, born of the 1980s farm crisis. And so NSAC is a unique grassroots advocacy organization here in DC with a close, we'll say, window into the world of Congress and working relationship with Congress that has been established over the decades. It all starts with farmers and stakeholders on the ground, right, who experience the many challenges and the realities of farming. Many of the folks here in this room, I know. We hear from those folks, their ideas, challenges, experiences that folks here in DC simply cannot understand from that perspective unless we've been there. And that experience is channeled up through our member organizations, member groups, who collect that input, collect these stories, and bring that back to the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition through this archaic system of committees and processes to establish priorities, etc. But we establish our annual priorities, and all of that to campaign to win. And the Farm Bill, of course, is not the only vehicle for change. There are opportunities to enact change through administration reform, rules, etc. in off-Farm Bill years, but the Farm Bill is the major opportunity to influence federal food and farm policy, as you all know. So it's working with Congress, working with federal agencies, USDA in particular, to create those needed changes, to bring those ideas that we're hearing from the farm to life in Capitol Hill. And so, wanting to dive into that 2023 Farm Bill just a little bit, right? I'm sure that folks here know now there are 12 titles to the Farm Bill, right? Ranging all the way from commodities all the way to miscellaneous. And NSAC is taking action along several fronts in almost every title to advance equity in the Farm Bill. We do have a Farm Bill platform. Of course, it's about 140 pages. So it's not light reading. I think that we're definitely known for the most dense platform in the space. But if you are curious and really want to dive into the weeds, they are all there, and they're long. But this includes action on climate, leading the call to double conservation funding for programs that are oversubscribed and underfunded. The Agriculture Resilience Act is the only comprehensive bill introduced this Congress to address climate change in agriculture along many fronts, investing in proven solutions. We're working to improve the capacity of local and regional processing facilities, access to which is still especially dire after the COVID-19 pandemic through the Strengthening Local Processing Act. And NSAC has introduced a local foods bill. We're working to improve sustainable agriculture research, etc., through the SARE program. Many of these topics, I'm sure, are familiar to you, things that you've heard about, issues that are close to your hearts. These are important programs that serve underserved farmers and that could serve them much better. However, there's not enough discussion on the farm safety net and the role that these programs play in shaping resource concentration and farm consolidation over the last several decades. So I wanted to take the time today to dive a little bit into those programs and what it means. Title I of the Farm Bill, Commodities and Disaster, and Title 11 of the Farm Bill, Crop Insurance. And so this is where my handy dandy little charts would have come in handy, but imagine a pie chart, right?
It's total farm bill spending, right? Or projected farm bill spending over the next 10 years with a baseline looking at the 2023 Farm Bill. We're looking at approximately $1.4 trillion, and about 4/5 of that pie is nutrition spending, SNAP, etc., something I know you're all familiar with. Only about 1/5 of that pie, less of the pie than in previous Farm Bill cycles, goes to farm production, right? Actual farming. And of that pie, most of those dollars in that fifth go towards commodity programs and crop insurance, with some of the rest going to conservation programs and a little bit going to research, local foods, urban ag, a little bit. But most of those dollars, by far, are going to crop insurance and commodity programs. In the past, more of that money has gone towards commodity program spending, but in recent years, we've seen a shift where crop insurance is actually the biggest slice of that farm safety net pie. And so, take a little bit of a step back. What are these programs? What are these things? Right? The farm safety net today includes crop insurance, commodity programs, disaster assistance. And safety net is necessary to help protect farmers and ranchers from the many risks of farming, of course, but it shouldn't pick winners and losers, and it does. And so when we look at, again, that pie and look at where this money is going, you can see, again, it's all going to the largest and most successful producers. These programs, crop insurance, commodity programs, are not designed to serve the needs of small to mid-sized, diversified, BIPOC, local food, direct-to-market producers. They're simply not. And so, to take a little bit of a deep dive into crop insurance and to try to expose briefly with the time that we have some of the absurdities in this system, there are no payment caps or means tests on crop insurance premium subsidies. So what does that mean? Crop insurance subsidies aren't a direct payment that farmers get year to year. Rather, they are discounts that a farmer will receive on the premium they need to pay in order to access insurance. And we'll talk about these in a moment. There are, on the books, some payment limits, et cetera, on commodity programs, but none on federal crop insurance, which means the only farmers who are able to access insurance by virtue of design, et cetera, are these largest farms, commodity producing farms. And when we see the money that is paid in subsidies to these farms, or rather the crops that receive crop insurance subsidies, it's going to corn, it's going to soybeans, it's going to wheat, it's going to cotton, right? With all other crops bundled together in a small sliver of that pie, right? Where 70% of crop insurance premium subsidies go to the top 20% of farms, with an average household wealth of between $3 million and $20 million. These are the folks that the federal government, through the Farm Safety Net, through the federal crop insurance program, is subsidizing. Whereas the little guy, right, left to market forces, right, left to fend for themselves with no comparable safety net. There are some insurance programs that are intended, right, to serve small and diversified farms, whole farm revenue protection being the prominent example. In theory, works great. It ensures a farm's entire revenue, their entire operation, not just one crop. But there are paperwork burdens and other administrative burdens, disincentives for agents to sell, et cetera, that have made whole farm revenue protection, unfortunately, not a compelling tool for farmers to avail themselves of, or an accessible tool in many cases. So while we have significant subsidization for the largest farms to receive a safety net, small guys, BIPOC producers, underserved producers are left with nothing. And when we look at spending for these crop insurance subsidies, it's dramatically increasing. For about 10 years, the average spending on crop insurance premium subsidies was about $5 billion per year, give or take 6. In 2022, that number jumped to $11.6 billion, almost double the 10-year average. no one bats an eye when we pay $6 billion additional dollars to commodity producers and private insurance companies who, in the Farm Bill, are guaranteed a 14.5% profit rate, which the Government Accountability Office has found and reported on over several years, over a decade, that does not reflect market necessities. Nobody bats an eye at this spending. And so let's take a deep dive into these commodity programs now. There are two primary commodity programs we'll dive into just a little bit. The Agriculture Risk Coverage Program, also known as ARC, and the Price Loss Coverage Program, also known as PLC, both of which are designed to protect against falling revenue. ARC is designed to protect against falling commodity prices on the market. PLC is designed to protect a farmer enrolled if the commodity value falls below a reference price that is set in statute by the Farm Bill, right? And so a farmer needs to choose every year, a commodity farmer, right? To be very clear, the only people whom are eligible for commodity program payments, again, the largest crops, corn and soybeans, et cetera. They'll need to choose which makes sense for their farm in a given year. But to be eligible for these commodity program payments in statute, you need to be actively engaged in farming. And you can presume that means someone who's actively farming, right? Contributing to a significant amount of the hours on the land, et cetera. But it doesn't quite work out that way. A 2020 Trump administration rule exempts all family farms from actively engaged in farming requirements. And folks in this room, I'm sure, know 98% of farms are family farms. And so there are effectively no actively engaged requirements in place for eligibility for these commodity programs. Further, they are also eligible, or rather, family members of these farmers are thus eligible for these payments as well, right? You do not need to be actively engaged. Your cousin, your niece, your sibling, right, your et cetera, extended family members are now eligible for these commodity program payments without ever needing to step foot on a farm. And further, per farm payment caps do exist in statute. $125,000 per year, or $250,000 of taxpayer dollars per year if you're married. But these are easily avoided by commodity farms, in theory, by fabricating paper farms, right? Where maybe there's a per farm limit, but you're able to take your farm and you're able to, through the paperwork, et cetera, with FSA, create several farming operations out of your several thousand acre farm, right? So you can receive a $125,000 or $250,000 payment on all of those individual operations on your thousands of acres. And the cherry on top, roughly $90 billion has been authorized by Congress in additional ad hoc disaster spending in the last several years, since 2017, before the pandemic. Again, that is spending above the Farm Bill baseline that has been authorized for these commodity producers to receive disaster assistance. So they're not, and almost all of those dollars has gone to, again, the largest and most successful farms. And so commodity producers have great crop insurance coverage, they have access to commodity programs, and they're receiving additional disaster assistance year after year by Congress, where again, what are underserved farmers getting from the federal government, right? We are fighting for $50 million here, $10 million there, $5 million there to advance these programs, to build alternative solutions, and that is important, vital work. However, if we do not look to the concentration of resources that is being delivered to industrial agriculture in this country, we're never going to be able to create the food system that we dream of, right? And so, looking at the farm economy as well, to another graph, many commodity groups are calling for reference price increases because commodity prices are at record highs today, as we see. commodity groups in this farm bill are calling for, beyond all other priorities, higher reference prices to lock in this current rate of commodity prices so that any year henceforth, should commodity prices fall, and they will, it will invariably trigger a commodity program payment, right? So rather than a farm safety net, advocating for an entitlement program for the largest, wealthiest farms to essentially know that they're going to get an extra $125,000 or $250,000 every year. And they're justifying this call for additional subsidization and higher insurance subsidization. There's a hearing going on in Dirksen that I just came from where they're speaking to these very issues and asking for these priorities. They say net farm income is expected to go down roughly 15% next year, and input prices are higher than ever. And while both of these things are true, gross farm income is also at a record high. And so a farm safety net should be just that, a safety net to protect farmers against unpredictable losses in farming, and not a guaranteed profit and a wide profit, right? In the face of not losses, but just a slightly slimmer profit margin. And so in closing, right, these farm safety net programs are, again, becoming entitlements for the largest and most successful farms. They artificially remove risk from what are inherently risky operations, right? Monoculture, industrial agriculture, right? The search for efficiency necessarily means removing all redundancies from a system, right? Which make these farms especially vulnerable to pathogenic threats, to weather threats, which we're seeing more and more of. Why we're seeing all this additional spending, disaster spending. It's necessary because these farms are not ready for what's coming with changing climate, et cetera, right? With reduced soil health, the soil that's dead, right? It removes risk from these farms because they know that they're going to have a profit every year given the farm safety net. It works really well for them. And meanwhile, that thus reduces any incentive that there might be to innovate, to adopt conservation practices, soil health practices. There's no incentive to do that, right? Whereas, again, small, sustainable BIPOC farmers need to rely on themselves and their grit and investments, right, in order to build their own soil health and build on-farm risk management systems that large farms simply don't need to do. And the concentration of subsidies in the hands of few farms has contributed to higher land prices because folks selling land want a cut of that money they know is going, right, from the federal government into farmer pockets, and it's contributed to farmland consolidation. It's contributed to desolation of our rural communities, and it directly corresponds to rising diet-related illness, right? When we're looking at the food production that's subsidized in our country, it's not the fruits and veggies that we're told we should be eating most of, right? And again, as commodity groups are calling for higher subsidies than ever, small farmers, diversified farmers, organic farms, BIPOC farmers, beginning farmers, underserved farmers are left in the dust. And in closing, Congress should do many big picture things. But in the interim, right, looking at the 2023 Farm Bill, looking at political realities, the least that this Congress could do and should do is close commodity program payment loopholes that actively engaged rural, paper farms, et cetera, and introduce caps and means tests on crop insurance premium subsidies. NSAC commissioned a report last summer that projected about almost $17 billion would be saved over 10 years if there were a $50,000 cap on crop insurance premium subsidies. So you'll still receive $50,000 from the federal government every year on your crop insurance premium subsidy. But you won't get any more than that. It would save $17 billion and impact just about 3% of farms.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
I'd like to invite back all of our panelists. Stay there, Billy.
Oh.
And we're going to have Q&A.